Think back to the first time that you were first introduced to drugs. What age were you? Where were you? Who were you with? Odds are you're probably 12, 13 years old, just starting middle school, hanging out with your friends, not doing really anything important. According to an anonymous interview by The Breeze, a JMU student was found to have been peer pressured into trying drugs as early as 7th grade. That's when you're just becoming a teenager. Most people in this room, we're all 18, 19, we're still technically teenagers. From the age group of 13 to 18 or 19 years old, this is the age group that is most affected by drug use.
Everyone knows what drugs are, but not everyone knows the distinction between drugs and synthetic drugs. We're here to inform you guys about the growing abuse of synthetic drugs and its effects within Harrisonburg and on us as JMU students. Synthetic drugs are used creating man-made chemicals, and it's not by any means natural. There's no way of knowing what each synthetic drug that you're taking might contain, and just a small modification in the chemical makeup of one drug can create a completely different drug with new effects and an entirely new experience.
As you can see by this graph, that was where the data was compiled from an FBI database. We see that there is a growing trend in the number of drug arrests that from 2010 to 2015. This is a very big and prevalent problem, and it's still a problem today.
Now we're going to focus on why people turn to drug abuse, which contributes to the rise of drug abuse in Harrisonburg. The first cause comes from an NBC News investigation by McFarlane. Basically what the report was trying to get at was that drugs are becoming incredibly cheap and easy to find. Teenagers like you and me are able to access them increasingly more easier than they have been ever before. The next cause was published by the National Forums Institute published guide, Over the Edge. It was published in 2015, and it regarded what to do when drugs become a problem. From this, we took the reasons of why drugs have become a problem and how they are caused. And this encompasses the rest of the causes we will discuss today. The first is that 1 in 4 people with mental health issues turn to drug abuse. This is because they are trying to self-medicate themselves, and also there is a correlation between drug use disorders and mental illness that are caused by overlapping factors. These factors include brain deficits, genetic vulnerability, and early exposure to stress and trauma. The next cause from this source is that high unemployment causes people to be more likely to abuse drugs. This is because of the increased stress and depression in their lives. Also in 2013, researcher Michael French says that leisure effect dominates income effect. What he meant by this is that as their income goes down, their leisure time is also going up. And in order to fill this leisure time, people are turning to drugs, and that turning to drugs is more important to them than their income, which is going down. The fourth cause pointed out in this source was that discrimination causes people to turn to the use of drugs. This is because they feel that there is a lack of power in their life, and they turn to drugs as coping mechanisms to decrease stress and negativity in their life.
Another factor for the rise in the cause and the rise of synthetic drugs is that drugs nowadays are easily accessible through the media. They're glamorized in the TV that we see, and the music that we listen to, and video games that we play. It makes these drugs seem like they are fun, sexy, and problem-free. Shows like Breaking Bad, Narcos, and Weeds that we all tend to watch on Netflix, they make it seem like all these things are okay to do, and that you're not going to get caught when you do them. And it makes it seem like you're not going to be harmed either. Another thing is the music that we listen to with rappers, they promote these drugs and such. Many songs about Molly nowadays, synthetic marijuana, all these different things. And rappers like Lil Wayne, here he is like holding up medication. It's just they make it seem like it's okay and that you're not going to be harmed. And video games as well, like Grand Theft Auto. It's also easy to go on the internet nowadays and find blogs of how awesome these different drugs are and that they really aren't as bad for you as they seem, which in truth is not the case. Even with the rise of music festivals nowadays, it's more likely that you're going to find someone that is on drugs than not. And usually from people that are just there and they do not know what they're getting. The final cause of the rise of the abuse of synthetic drugs is the lack of accurate and widely available information about the substances and the risks that they have and their deadly consequences. In an interview with KTLA News, a young man had tried K2 for the first time. His father had to say that in a moment of peer pressure, he gave in to that, thinking that it was okay, it was somehow safe, and 1 hit later, he went to sleep and didn't wake up again. Another thing is our health classes in school. They're not giving us enough information about these drugs. They're giving us the mainstream drugs, such as ecstasy, Molly, and all these things, but they aren't telling us about the chemicals that they are mixed with, and that you have no way of actually knowing what you're getting. And that's the problem for kids, is that that's causing many of the deaths because they truly don't know what they're getting, and they think they're getting these mainstream drugs that seem fun and all these different things, but in turn, they're really getting these terrible chemicals. With the abuse of synthetic drugs on the rise, now we have insight to who is taking these drugs, and now we're going to take a look at the effects of their actions.
The impact of the abuse of synthetic drugs is a public issue statewide in Virginia. There has been a large spread from foreign countries, a large spread of synthetic drugs from foreign countries into the United States, and especially Harrisonburg, Virginia. According to the Department of Justice, they came from China, packaged in numerous ways, including children's stuffed animals and cosmetic fingernail dryers. The impact of synthetic drug use has become clear in Harrisonburg, Virginia. According to Supervisory Special Agent Mark Campbell of the Virginia State Police, there has been an increase in portable meth labs in Harrisonburg. In the past year and a half, he has found 20. This is what a portable meth lab looks like, and sources say that you could take $50 to $60 and walk into a hardware store and make your own portable meth lab. Mark Campbell was also part of the Rush Task Force created to combat drug abuse in Harrisonburg. In 2012, they seized 731 grams of meth and 1,528 grams of steroids from college students in Harrisonburg. To put this number into perspective, 2,259 grams is roughly the average weight of 4 Chipotle burritos.
According to Agraniga and his associates from the National Forums Institute, synthetic drugs have a very high financial toll in society, which has a large effect on taxpayers. This is mostly prevalent with health system costs and judicial system costs. So in the health system, with the synthetic drugs, we don't know what we're getting in these drugs, so there are a lot more hospital visits that occur, an increase in emergency room visits, and outpatient care costs. Many of these people are uninsured, which that money has to come from the taxpayers. The judicial costs for taxpayers is the money for law enforcement and court members to combat these issues, which again comes from the state taxes. According to the Breeze, Harrisonburg taxpayers have to pay even more for law enforcement because of Rush, the special task force to combat synthetic drugs. There's an additional cost in the judiciary system within the prison system. Parole officers, prison guards, attorneys, and housing inmates all have added costs. The widespread effect of these drugs is very prevalent again on younger people and college students. In the Harrisonburg area, especially being the college town that it is, we have JMU, Eastern Mennonite University, Bridgewater College, and all of these colleges have a widespread use of drugs at their parties. Their parties become hotspots for selling and distributing these synthetic drugs, and the drugs used at these parties are becoming more and more synthetic, so we don't know what we're getting.
All right, so now that we've talked about the effects and the causes of this big issue. I'm going to touch base on the complexity. This is a very complex issue, so there are many factors that go into this. Some factors that we've already mentioned are TV, music, and video games, and making these drugs very glamorous and fun to do. One thing that we haven't really talked about is that how drug abusers are scared to go get the help that they need for fear of incarceration. This is mainly because, according to the findings of Agoniga and his associates from the National Forums Institute, they found that a lot of these people, they're afraid to go get help because of the fact that they don't understand the concept of confidentiality, meaning that the people they go to, they're bound by this concept of confidentiality, so that like if law enforcement approaches them, they are not required to give them that information. They cannot give them that information. They are required to keep that confidential, to keep them safe, so that they can get the help that they need. This then makes this a very complex issue, because if people are afraid to go get the help that they need, and so the problem will just continue to grow and will grow exponentially as it increases.
Another reason why this issue is so complex is that we can't just ban drugs altogether. Pharmaceutical companies need the freedom to produce drugs in order to help people and to give people drugs that they need to maintain their health. One problem is the ingredient known as cannabinoids. Cannabinoids have the same effect on the minds of humans as marijuana would have. The list of synthetic drugs that are rapidly growing, a lot of them include this ingredient of cannabinoids that is shown up here on the screen. This is a problem because law enforcement can't keep up with the synthetic drug abuse, the list of synthetic drugs that is continuing to grow, and also the drug testing companies can't keep up with the safety of prescription drugs and their ability to be abused. Synthetic drugs, as we can see, is a complex issue and a big problem that we cannot ignore.
With all the causes of this massive synthetic drug problem, such as them being cheap, easy, and accessible, glamorized by TV and music and video games that we all are used to, incarceration of people who want the help, and fear of people getting the help that they need due to the fear of incarceration, and the need of pharmaceutical companies to continue production, we truly do have a big problem on our hands. And it's not only the problem of the adults in our area, but the children as well, especially teenagers like you and me. In these college campuses, with all these parties and different drug